As the other panelists make their way down, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our next two panelists. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the legislative update. First, we have Senator David Simmons. David Simmons is the state senator for District 9, serving Seminole, Volusia counties. He's also the president pro tem and chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. He served in the Florida House of Representatives from 2000 to 2008. He's responsible for creating for the first time a comprehensive legislative framework and major funding to save Florida's precious springs, our aquifers, and Lake Okeechobee. He's lived in Florida since 1977 and has a long history of public service in the state of Florida. Representative Holly Rashine, she was elected in 2012 to represent the 120th District, which includes Monroe County and southern Miami-Dade. During her tenure, she's been an absolute rock star on our issues, and perhaps part of that is due to her coming up through the process. But I know an even larger part of that is her concern for constituents and her drive to truly make a difference. So please welcome our panelists here. Representative, I'm going to start with you. What issues do you see as being at the forefront for water and environment for this upcoming session?
Thank you. Well, that's a loaded question to start off with a bang. And thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. I think that water is going to continue to be at the forefront. I know that we have a natural disaster that we're all anticipating right now, so that might suck the air out of the room this coming session. But again, I think that the focus is very much going to be on water quality and water water restoration and obviously Everglades and things like that. But last year we did a great job in the budget, but we did not accomplish at a policy level. I know what Senator Simmons and I were interested in, and my counterpart in the Senate, Senator Mayfield, in terms of policy. How are we going to move our state forward with policy? The dollars are there, that's amazing, but we have not really crossed the threshold with regards to septic to sewer, springs. You know, what are we going to do moving forward? So I would hope that we're going to have a lot of focus on actually passing some water policy.
That's great. As y'all would say on the floor, as a point of personal privilege, do you maybe have some personal accomplishments you want to see, since this is your last go around, something for the Keys?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm very biased when I say I represent the most amazing district in the Florida House, District 120. But so I think a lot of focus needs to be put on counties like Miami-Dade, right? They've got a major infrastructure problem in Miami-Dade County. Broward, not so much. Palm Beach is doing a good job, but we've got a significant issue in that county. So we've done a pretty good job, if you ask me, in the Keys with our infrastructure, and I'd like to see some movement further north.
Well, great. Well, Senator Simmons, Representative Rashine touched on this a little bit, but last session a lot of money was appropriated for restoration. But one of the topics that we covered here extensively yesterday was water infrastructure funding. Do you see any support for increasing that infrastructure funding through the legislature?
Absolutely. And I believe that what Senator Mayfield started with in Senate Bill 1758, which is a bill that tries to put some meat on the bones of the comprehensive water bill that we were able to pass in 2016, which is a tremendous piece of legislation because it does set a time period to get a lot accomplished, and that's 20 years, and with the premise that there would be the infrastructure, that the local governments would work with the various individuals, have public hearings, and then make a determination along with DEP to come up with plans in accordance with the BMAPs. But what happened is that as the rush came in June 30th of 2018, that the fact of it is that just there needed to be more guidance with respect to the infrastructure. And we've got to be able to do the septic to sewer transitions that are essential, and we need to provide the guidance. I don't believe that our local governments or either the DEP did anything willful or anything like that in not getting the exhibits to the BMAPs that provided the detail for the infrastructure. I believe that we need to provide that kind of roadmap for them so that the infrastructure can be done and that DEP can lead on this the way it should in accordance with a plan and parameters set by the legislature. I think that's essential for us to be able to do this, and also provide a funding mechanism to assist local governments in being able to accomplish this. But I also believe that local governments are ultimately responsible within their own jurisdiction for the completion of these infrastructural changes. And we know that the wastewater treatment facilities are a significant factor in the problems that we have, particularly in the urban areas. We also know that there are other areas in which other factors are a significant part. But the individuals who are part of all of this need to remember one thing, that the future of the state of Florida is based upon clean, pure environment with clean, pure water as the basis for all of it. There will be no home building if what happens that there are individuals who believe that there should be, some kind of stopping of all of this. I'm a believer in being able to continue with a robust economy based upon a clean environment. We will not have the tourism that is essential to the future of this state. We will not have any of the economy that each of probably the participants here would like to have in this state, with 22 million people in it and literally 350,000 moving here every year, if they think that this is not a clean environment. And so it is essential for us to make those changes right now with the infrastructural planning, be proactive, not reactive. That is the essence of what the legislature should be doing, just as one of the prior commentators said. And that is, we need to be proactive rather than trying to clean up a mess. The canary is in the coal mine. All of this, we know that the things that we have seen cause us to want to do what Representative Rashine and I were beginning to do last year, and obviously what Senator Mayfield was trying to do in the Senate, and we will continue on with that plan, and it'll be to assure a robust, prolific economy in the state of Florida.
Well, thank you. Well, Senator, you mentioned the BMAPs, and wanted to touch base on, a few years ago, the legislature told DEP, told the water management districts, go forth, complete your BMAPs, complete your minimum flows and levels, your MFL. And time again, we see delays in completion to those due to lawsuits. I'm going to say frivolous lawsuits, but is there anything that the legislature could do to help ease that frustrating situation? And I know I'm not asking from your legal perspective.
Well, I do believe there is. And this comes down to the fact that the BMAPs were intended to have been prepared with more input and more work with the local governments so that there could be a detailed methodology by which infrastructural changes would need to be made. And I believe that we said move as fast as possible. We set deadlines. And I believe that the exhibits to some of those BMAPs are inadequate. And I have stated there is one way for us to get rid of those lawsuits, and that is to provide the mechanism so that there won't be someone who is a hearing officer looking and seeing an Exhibit A that talks about stuff that was accomplished 15 years ago, or TBD, to be determined. We've got to help with getting this solved. I think it's something that is entirely appropriate for the legislature to do this session, and we can stop any kind of lawsuits that are impinging upon the ability of the DEP to do what it needs to do. I'm looking forward to being able to work with all of the stakeholders, particularly those who have traditionally. Look, when I got started on this in 2013, when we talked about a comprehensive water bill and was dealing with the springs, I had two groups of people who wouldn't even meet in the same room with each other. And I had environmentalists saying tax, 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 and I told them, go down to the bank, take out a loan, and buy a clue, because that ain't going to happen. And so I had certain people who were so angry in the business community said they don't want to talk to anybody over there. Well, the closer and closer we got to talking, it was amazing that we could finally get a solution to this, because a clean environment, just as the governor has made really clear, is essential to not only the economy, the quality of life of the state of Florida. So with respect to the BMAPs, we can solve that problem because we can provide the detail that is essential to get rid of those kind of lawsuits.
All right, well, thank you. Representative Rashan, a good bit of this conference has been focused on potable reuse. We just had another panel on that this morning. Do you see that as a viable tool for the Keys, and is there anything legislatively that can be done to encourage even more potable reuse?
Absolutely, without a doubt. I think the Keys are a prime example of reuse, and I would like to see us focus more on all the emerging technologies that are out there. And if you ask me, I think the Keys are a fantastic location to maybe deploy something like a pilot program. We're a pretty isolated place, geographically speaking, and I think that we should be incentivizing and encouraging, as a state, more technology and, of course, and reuse.
Well, thanks. And this ties in, and actually, Senator Simmons, since a lot of this is already occurring in your area, this might be a better question for you. To incentivize the implementation of potable reuse in Florida, utilities need assurances that their traditional water supplies under permits will not be reduced. This has led to claims of water banking. We've all heard that term. How can the legislature balance creating incentives for utilities without the claims of water banking?
Well, I think that we need to provide the proper parameters so that we can assure that, there are, as many of the things that we have in our world, we have parameters around what we can do, and other than demagogue, and that is that there are constitutional rights, and we have the right to property, and once water is extracted, it belongs to the person who has pulled it, and so there are things that are essential to our economy. I'm a big believer in agriculture. I believe that the people who say that we ought not have agriculture are going to be the same ones who are not going to be eating very long or very much, and that it is essential to our economy as well as to our well-being. And I believe that what we can do is deal with that issue this year and be able to provide the proper parameters within constitutional and obviously rational rules of reason. And so, yes, I know that we've got to deal with it. We've got a problem not only with respect to the quality of our water, we've got a quantity issue, particularly in Central Florida.
Well, great. So I'm going to throw this question out, and this can be either one of you. This is another one of the cards from the audience. There were several bills introduced in 2019 to address septic tanks, but none of them made it through the process. And we heard a panelist yesterday call septic tanks the third rail here in Florida, and that might be very well. And I'm not trying to electrocute you this morning, but I did want to ask, because y'all are both thought leaders from your positions here in the legislature, and what do you think can be done about that in 2020?
I'll start, and maybe you can follow. Well, I truly, septic tanks have their place, right? There are some communities and some areas that are very rural, and hooking up to a central sewer system is not feasible. I get that. But I also like to say, if the Florida Keys can hook up, then anybody can hook up. And while that was a painful, painstaking process, very expensive, it was just over $1 billion in Monroe County, and about 20 years it took us to completely sewer that beautiful island chain. But I do truly think that septic tanks are antiquated. They're a thing of the past. I understand that they're, hooking up to a central sewer system is expensive. It takes a lot of work, but I think that it is a movement that we need to embrace. It's a movement that the legislature needs to work on. I think we need to fund it. We need to help these local governments and these counties and municipalities. We need to help them pave the way. But again, I say if we can do it in coral rock, we can do it in dirt. So, want to add to that?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Because I think she's got a great point, and that is that whether it's what Tampa Bay did to the Tampa Bay area with respect to cleaning up the Tampa Bay, whether it has to do with the Keys, cleaning up the Keys, that the first thing that we have to do is the same thing that, I'll talk about two Chinese proverbs. One of them is that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and we all know that that first step is most important. Well, we've got to have a plan, and that's what we started with in 2016, requiring that there be a plan. Because all of these numbers that are thrown out, that this is going to cost all these billions of dollars, what we have found is once you take that first step, you find out that once you are proactive on all of this, you don't have to worry about the fact that there's some number out there that everybody keeps telling you it's billions of dollars. It becomes a manageable problem once you are proactive in dealing with it. And the only way you can proactively deal with it is to actually determine what the problem is. And then you find out that much of it can be solved without all of these numbers that everybody talks about. So I think this is clearly solvable. And with respect to septic to sewer, I can tell you that once we get a handle on it, it'll be, and that's talking about identifying what I call worst first, those that are the ones that are the biggest contributors, that we go ahead and solve it. We're going to find that the problems that everybody says that exist out there that are so insurmountable are absolutely able to be solved. And that's what I want to be able to help Representative Rashine and the House do, because once we do that, we will be able to take all of this before it gets into the situation in which we're just doing a bunch of, emergency cleanup. So this is solvable, and it'll help to assure that that the individuals who represent industry, those who represent business, will be able to be here in business not only next year, but for years to come.
We have a couple more questions I'm going to take from the audience, and this one has to be an engineer wrote this question. But I'm going to ask it anyway, because I know how I would answer if I was a member. But it says, water infrastructure funding policy changes needed? We touched on infrastructure funding a little bit earlier. Should we abandon member water projects in favor of a work program type style after FD?
Yes.
Would you like me to finish, or you want to go ahead and jump on it?
Of course, yes.
She already knows what you're going to say. She's a woman, and she can understand these things.
No, finish the question.
Beyond just her extreme intelligence and knowing this issue, time and time again, should we abandon member water projects for a FDOT transportation work program style funding source?
Yes, amen. Yes, we should. For the love of my committee. I mean, is it fun going to my committee and listening to those water projects? No, it's terrible. Anyways, but I try to make it fun. But yes, absolutely. DOT has this wonderful work plan that they have over, 10 years, right? And they know how much money they need for these projects. There's a roadmap literally for our roads. And why does a state as large and as important as Florida, why do we not have a roadmap for water? I say abandon that. Let's empower DEP to do this study and to determine exactly what, is it $20 billion? Is it $5 billion? What do we need as a state to make sure that we are, we're moving forward with water quality, Everglades restoration, septic to sewer, all of it. What does that look like? And I think that we need to empower the agency to go ahead and do that, because believe me, I don't want to sit through another session of hundreds of water bills, but I will, don't worry.
Senator?
I agree in many respects with what Representative Rashine has said, but also I point out that there need to be parameters and rules of engagement for the DEP so that they understand that these are things that have to be accomplished. And once they're given that set of guardrails, parameters, so that they can get these things done, because we've already seen with the BMAPs as they presently are, unless we provide that kind of detailed structure, then it won't get done. And so I plan on trying to help with that this year. I will say to you that there probably will always be certain goals that, or grants that would be water projects that Representative Rashine is talking about, because that can work along with a structure and a dedicated source of revenue for the projects that the DEP and the water management districts, to the extent that they can be brought back into this, can do, so that both of them can coexist. And having been the President Pro Tem and part of the Senate leadership team, I can tell you that there will always be those special amounts that certain senators and certain representatives want to be in a project, and that's just the prerogative of having gone through the political process.
And we all appreciate your legislative prerogative. One last question, and this is for both of you, related to Section 404, the assumption of that program. Both of you worked extremely hard on that bill, as long as with a lot of people in this room who saw that as landmark legislation. Have you received any updates or heard anything, or is there anything the legislature can be doing to push for us to actually attain that assumption?
I have unfortunately zero update on that, and then, you know, that was one of my proudest accomplishments in working with Senator Simpson and passing that. I had no idea what 404 was when they came to me and said, "Hey, Chairman Caldwell said, hey, you're going to do the 404 bill," and I was like, "Oh, awesome! What's 404? Okay." And then I realized, obviously, working on the issue and how important it is for our state. And right now, it's a ripe time, and we need to be taking advantage of this. And I think it's incumbent upon both of us to check in with DEP to see where they're at.
And while she said Senator Simpson.
Oh, gosh, Simmons. Oh, my gosh.
She meant his twin, Senator Simmons.
I did that earlier.
And everybody
I
does
meant
it.
Senator Simmons.
But the point of it is that I carried that bill in the Senate, and I believe very strongly that it's a good policy. And I did have the opportunity, because I was meeting with the DEP and the St. Johns River Water Management District about Lake Jessup and cleaning it up just about a week and a half ago. And I think I see Adam out there, Adam Lovejoy, who is the PR individual for the Water Management District. But I did have a chance to talk to the representative of the DEP and ask about the status of it. And the answer is that they are pushing forward and making progress, but they still need to, it's the detail of getting the approvals by the federal government with respect to this. But there is no doubt that they are plowing forward with it, and I'm pleased, and I believe that Representative Rashine and I should continue to monitor this, as well as everyone else here, because it was a good bill, an excellent bill, and I was proud to have done it.
Well, we all just want to thank you so much for your time here today as panelists, because it's just highlighted the importance of this conference and hearing directly from the policymakers. We truly appreciate that. But not just your time today, but all the time over the years that you've put into protecting not only just the industries here represented in this room, but the environment of the state of Florida. And we know your hearts and minds are in the right place, and we greatly appreciate that. And we are sorry to have to get on out of here for the impending storm, but I'm going to ask Mr. Speaker to come on up and close us out. Thank you very much.
And it's Senator Simmons. Oh, my gosh.
Well, thank you to John and to Jeff Littlejohn and the whole team for once again doing a great job with the water conference. I think despite the uncertainty about the damage we're about to sustain, we've reached about 90% of our goals that we would have been able to in the best of weather and circumstances. So that's a tribute to the team. It's also a huge tribute to all of our speakers. I want to start with the legislators collectively and thank them. Last night I recognized that Leader Pasadomo's panel was canceled today, but she wanted to come up and spend some time with us anyway. And then the one that made the furthest trip was Representative Rashine from the Keys. So we really appreciate that. And don't worry about Simmons. So you may have temporarily offended two Florida senators, but when I was Speaker of the House, the senator will tell you I would offend all 40 at once on a regular basis. So it's he'll testify to that.
Daily.
Daily, yes.
And I was in the House with him, under him, and we assured that all of us did.
But we appreciate all of you. Our subject matter experts make this really the premier event to share from different perspectives water. I do want to mention on the last note, Section 404, AIF has a fly-in, a Florida business fly-in to D.C. It's in your briefing book on September 23 and 24. We expect to have an event for Governor Scott on Monday evening after we get briefings at NAM. So we'll have a reception for Governor Scott and our House members. In the morning, we'll be over at the White House in the, Senator Rubio is scheduled for lunch on Tuesday, the 24th. And then in the afternoon, Congressman Webster has us our own room where about every 10 minutes we have a congressman or woman from the Florida delegation show up and give us a briefing. So you don't have to chase members of Congress, like I was for a while, around through all the different buildings and then end up talking to some staffer that really doesn't handle your issues, which is what happens on a lot of fly-ins. So we've had great success with that. I will tell you that we will be asking the White House, amongst others, to give us a briefing on Section 404 implementation from the federal angle. We worked hard to get Florida the flexibility to deal with that. And I'm sure, just like we did 2 years ago after Michael, we will be getting updates from FEMA and the administration on response. It'll be about it won't even be a month really after the storm. It'll be three and a half weeks. So as we are dealing with what Florida's needs are, 3 or 4 weeks, it'll be very timely. And we had a great briefing from FEMA 2 years ago. So I want to thank finally all of our sponsors again. We are very grateful. I hope all of you have a safe and happy Labor Day. Remember, priorities are water, electricity, and TV sets for the college football games. Once you take care of the safety, the other 3 priorities are pretty easy. So thanks, everybody. Safe travels and have a good weekend.